Hey guys, welcome back to Baka Burrito. Devin here, and I just have a quick update for you guys because, as you can tell by the thumbnail and the title, the Bakas, myself, Max, and Day, you may have seen him on he's been behind the scenes on a couple videos, but he's been in our Halloween special. I'll have the link to that up in the corner, whichever one it is. So we took on the Gamer's Choice grand opening this past weekend, and it was a great time. We had a lot of fun. This was Max's and Day-Day's first large tournament. We learned a lot, and I'm going to go over their matchups and everything like that, and then I'll cover mine at the end because I have a little more insight for those. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoy. I'll be answering not answering any questions, but I'll be just providing a little bit of insight for each round as it comes, and just tell you guys how we did overall. So to get started, I will lead with Max's weekend. So he went 3-4. I know a lot of the times people on YouTube will say X and whatever the losses were. That doesn't really matter. I don't care about the variable. It was 3-4. So, none of us performed super well, but it was still a really good time, and it got their feet wet in a bigger tournament. This is only my second large tournament ever as well. But if you guys have never been, I highly recommend that you guys try one out. And okay, so Max's first matchup was actually against Jen from Head to Head Battles. She was playing Shadol Invoked Dogmatica, and he actually won his first round. I think it went to game 3, and that's really impressive because Max was playing Heroes, and for the newer players who may not know, Heroes is I would definitely rank them lower on a tier list than I would rank Shadol, but that just goes to show that even a lower tier deck can have a better matchup against a meta deck, or what's considered a meta deck. So everything just comes down to the call, how comfortable you feel playing that deck. And Max was able to squeeze out a win in round 1. So he didn't remember his round 2, but he did lose round 2. And then round 3, he played against Drytron, which was a really hard matchup going into the day. There were a lot of Drytron players. Even myself, I played Drytron going into the tournament. So Max isn't too well versed with that matchup. He knows better now. He wasn't siding Droll. However, he did have Ash. He had Ghost Ogre. Not for Drytron. He had that for VW. But going forward, he's starting to side in other cards. He's looking into Cycle Reader for his sideboard. So he did take a loss in round 2, so he is 1-1 by round 2. So he's 1-2 in round 3. So in round 4, it's funny, he actually got matched up against Day, and Day was playing PK Fire. Max actually ended up squeezing out the win using Dark Law, and then he was able to out Day spells and traps in game 3. In game 2, and he was able to squeeze out the victory there. So Max is 2-2 in round 4. I assume that his round 5 was actually Drytron. However, he has terrible spelling, but I'm going to assume it was Drytron because he did take a loss to that. And he was saying that he wasn't sure what to hit, so that sounds like that round. Then he ended up playing Invoked Eldritch. He took a loss there as well. However, that one went to game 3, and that was a very close match. He was actually sitting at the table right next to me. It was it was really funny. Game 1 was really close. Game 2 was a complete blowout. And I find that he's not entirely sure how to stop the traps. So I recommended to him that he may want to side in copies of Royal Decree. He has the, if you guys remember our hero list, I'll also plug that whichever side. In his hero list, he runs Feather Duster in the main deck, and he runs Twin Twister in the side deck. So he does have spell trap removal as well as Stratos as a form of back row popping, and Acid, I believe. Yeah, Acid, who also blows up back row. So he has a lot of back row hate. It's just if he can't get into it, then he's kind of stuck. And his last matchup was actually Dragon Link Blue Eyes, which he swiftly 2-0'd. That was actually a pretty decent match too. When I finished my matchup, I was able to watch the last game of his. He was able to out a board with Hope Harbinger Titanic Galaxy, I think is the name, number 38, as well as Gearsu, Meknight, or not Meknight Gearsu, Orcus Gearsu, or Dingirsu, or whatever his name is. And then there was one other, I think it was just a vanilla Blue Eyes. But he was staring down a rather large board, and he was able to out it using his hero combos. He went into Sunriser, Absolute Zero, and I believe Plasma was the last monster he summoned. And that was really cool because he played around the negate, even though Hope Harbinger was able to steal the first spell card. He was going to try to mask change the Vion, but that didn't work. So yeah, so Max's ending record was 3-4. Overall he had a pretty good day. His whole goal was to have fun going in, and like I said, he had some pretty decent matchups. We're still working out the Drytron matchup for everybody, truthfully. All right, moving on to Day Day's record. Like I said, he was 2-5 at the end of the day. However, it was his first tournament, first large tournament, and he was playing PK Fire, which truthfully I think in this current meta really loses to the same things that people are trying to hit in Drytron and trying to hit in Sky Striker. So there's a lot of spell trap removal. There's a lot of banishing cards. For example, DD Crow, Cosmic Cyclone, Twin Twister, Feather Duster, Imperial Order, Royal Decree, and all of those hit his deck to some capacity as well. So I think he probably had the hardest day going in, and that really showed in some of his matchups. So, in his first matchup, let me see, do I have it? 6. Okay, so his first matchup was Eldritch, and they very quickly got to work dismantling his board and his graveyard using Hakero to banish his spells and traps before he could activate them in grave, and as well as popping the cards on board so that he never had enough bodies on board to substantiate his plays. So he did take a loss in round 1 to Eldritch. However, moving into round 2, he faced a very interesting deck that I actually ended up facing later on in the day. A Resonator deck, like Red Dragon Archfiend spam, and he was able to shut down the plays before they got to Supernova Dragon. And that's a very interesting deck. I don't think it's like a high tier deck at all. However, every one of their synchro monsters is rather strong. For example, Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss is a walking negate. Scarlight Red Dragon Archfiend blows up the board and deals 500 damage for each special summon monster. And Supernova Dragon gains 500 attack for each tuner in the graveyard, and he comes out at 4,000 to start. So he goes up to 5,500, and then he's a quick effect, banish all of your opponent's cards and himself, and then he comes back at the end of the next end phase. So he's a really cool card. However, in that matchup, Day Day was able to stop most of the effects using Fog Blade and stopping them from actually being able to synchro summon. So that worked out. Moving into round 3, he told me to include this note that he bricked in game 1 against Adignister, and then in game 2 he didn't know the matchup. So when they got Arrival Ignister, the 4,000 walking towers, that was pretty much GG, because like there's not really much you can do against that because it has protection and everything like that. So he did take a loss to Adignister. Then he faced Invoke Dogmatica Shadal, and he was able to win game 1, but then he lost games 2 and 3. And then against Dragon Maid, which was mostly Dragon Link when I looked over, but they did have a substantial amount of the Dragon Maid cards as well. He took a loss, but in game 1 he won. Game 2 came down to the wire, and then he got beaten out. And then game 3 he was turned around, and he lost that one. However, he then played Numeron Dragoon Control, and he was able to out the Dragoon, out the Numeron board, survive the onslaught, and that's really interesting to me because that sounds like a much harder matchup than the last matchup, which is really funny. But by that round we were starving. I do have to put that out there. We ended up getting food shortly after. I forgot the match he played Max. Like I said before, during the Max section, he did end up losing to Heroes, but again, that's a really hard matchup for PK because with Dark Law on the board, banishing all of his combo pieces and the PK and BA engines can't actually substantiate a board, can't set up plays, and then he never drew the Imperial Order. Or actually, he did draw the Imperial Order, it just got outed both times because Max needs his spell cards to continue. So that about wraps up the entirety of the Day Day's day. Moving on to my day. I started with the mirror match. So I had Drytron in round 1, and in game 1 I did not open well. And then I sided in Gammas. I sided in not Imperm. I sided in Droll and Lock. So when my opponent started playing, I was able to Gamma the first play, and then I went to Droll and Lock. However, he had the response. That feels bad. And then when my next draw, it was the driver. So I had 2 cards, and he had a Herald of Ultimateness, and I couldn't out it, so we moved on to game 2. Sorry, that was game 2. Game 1, I didn't open that well. It was just a brick, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to concede. That player ended up going on to top 16, which makes me feel a little less bad, but still, pretty bad. Game 2, I ended up playing against, or matched, round 2 rather, I ended up playing against Mystic Mind Final Countdown. So I won game 1 due to a procedural error. But game 2, he beat me with using Final Countdown. When we got to about turn 10 and I didn't see the Feather Duster, I just surrendered and we moved on to game 3. Game 3 started, and he began his plays, and he got to the Final Countdown, but I was able to top the Feather Duster, get rid of his back row, and by then he had nothing else to stop my plays, so I was able to beat him. Then in round 3, I played another Drytron deck. I lost this round too. So this player also ended up going on to top as well. So with the Drytron matchup, I run a Necroz engine, and I will be posting all of our deck profiles except for Max, because his is exactly the same as when we last posted. I'll be posting Day and mine in the next coming weeks after my To Your Eternity video. So in the Drytron matchup, I've noticed that whoever goes first typically wins, and I lost the die roll, so I wasn't able to respond pretty much to anything in game 1. So I had to go swiftly to game 2, and when I went off, I built my board, and then I got Nibiru'd, and I was like, oh no. And then he had no play, so I was like, okay, cool. When we came back to my turn, I was able to Alpha, Zeta, Gamma, summon Delta, all of this, and then I summoned Beatrice, summoned Diviner, etc., etc., etc. And then, moving on, then he negated my effects, and I had a Unicorn and a Beatrice on field. So, Necroz of Unicorn, sorry. When we moved on to his turn, I had Beatrice that was being negated by Unicorn, and he went to snatch steal my monster using Natasha. And he was going to take it, so I activate the effect real quick just to get the Diviner Engrave. Um, so when that happened, since I activated a monster effect, he used Triple Tactics Talent and took my other monster as well, leaving my board wide open. He went into Boral Sword, leaving my Beatrice on his side of the field in attack mode, and was able to finish and OTK me for game. That didn't feel great, but like it was a very interactive game, so I wasn't too upset about it. Moving into round 4, I played against a... So at first it seemed like it was going to be like a Trickstar, Danger, Burn, Mill deck. It was weird. But it turned out he was using both of those engines to supplement a small Super Quantum engine. Because he was trying to get to Great Magnus. That never happened because I had 5 negates on a Herald of Ultimateness, and it was a very easy. It was very easy at that point. I was able to stop it again, and then proceed. Um, Moving on to round 5. Round 5 was very interesting for me because I came up against another Drytron deck, and so we sat down and we started playing. Turns out we had the wrong matchup. We had our opponent switch. So I actually ended up facing the Resonator deck that Day had faced earlier. This guy was a relatively new player, and there were a couple misplays that I coached him through. And after I coached him through them in game 1 and I lost, I was like, why did I coach him? I could have just won. But at the end of the game, after overall I ended up losing, but at the end of the game, he was like, "Wow, that you're really chill. Most players wouldn't help other players learn their deck," and I was like, "That makes me feel a little better." But at the same time, I probably should have just went for the win. But it happens. He opened very well, and he honestly deserves the W. He had a pretty good day. But yeah, I like helping new players because without new players, the community can't grow. So it happens. Moving into round, was that 5 or 6? Round 6, I actually faced another Mystic Mind deck. So I won game 1. Moving into game 2, I got decked out because I didn't realize that he was making me draw cards so frequently. And I was like, oh no, so it's a mill deck. So when I went into side for game 3, I didn't realize that it wasn't actually a mill deck. It was an Exodia deck. I actually ended up losing in game 3 with 8 minutes left in time due to Exodia's effect because I had outed 2 copies of Mystic Mine, and I was waiting on the Harpy's Feather Duster to out the 3rd, but he drew the last piece of Exodia before I could draw Feather Duster, and he ended up winning. So it's rough, but I do like innovative decks like that. I wish I could have gotten the profile, but he did use the card Draw of Fate, and that's really interesting. I think I'm going to try and build the deck to the best of my ability from what I remember. But yeah, it was very interesting. I like that deck a lot. Very innovative. And so my last round was the Infinitrack Machina control deck, and I was able to suppress that deck, but I really do like the way it was built. He's running a lot of trap cards, Trap Trick from the main deck, and the only reason I was able to steal the win so quickly in the second game was because he activated a Solemn Judgment at the beginning of my turn. And because of that, I was able to continue because I had an extra Drytron name in hand, and I was able to win. But all of my opponents were really respectful. All of my opponents were really cordial. Some things I learned about Drytron is when they brick hard. However, that their board potential is really so good. I got hit by 1 Cycle Reader and 1 Droll throughout the day, and both times I was able to keep playing. Not to the best of the deck's ability, but it was definitely still an optimal board, and I really appreciate the fact that the deck has those kinds of plays. Going into the tournament, I wasn't sure if I was going to be playing Zombie World or Drytron, and I'm glad I settled on Drytron. I wish I did a bit better. I ended up 3 and 4 as well. But yeah, I'm glad that Gamers Choice opened the shop. If they get OTS status and can start hosting regionals, I'd love to go back. My friends and I, we were all talking about it on the way back, that we'd love to go back to that shop, and it was a really good time, really good vibe. The staff is super friendly. The head judge was knowledgeable, and he was very, very busy yesterday. And I know that he also had, or sorry, Sunday, whenever you guys see this. But yeah, he was great, very helpful, very respectful, very knowledgeable about the game. And when he wasn't sure, he would deliberate with a couple of the other judges as well. But yeah, that about wraps up this tournament recap, whatever you want to call it. If you guys want more Yu-Gi-Oh content, leave a like down below. Also, if you guys also attended, let us know. You probably beat us there, and yeah, we'd like to have our community, our anime and Yu-Gi-Oh community grow. So look forward to more videos like this. Thanks, and catch you guys on the next one.